The world we live in is no longer made of brick and mortar. It's made of data. We've traded our privacy for a sense of security, mounting cameras on our porches and sensors on our windows, all to convince ourselves that we are safe. We trust the lens more than our own eyes. We believe that if the camera caught it, it must be true. But for Ethan Vance, the data was about to become a death sentence. It started on a Tuesday, a flat, gray afternoon in Ohio. Ethan was sitting in his office, the kind of sterile environment where nothing interesting ever happens. His phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. A simple notification: secure home, motion detected at front door. He didn't think much of it. A delivery, perhaps, or a stray dog. He swiped the screen to view the clip. The footage showed his porch. The sun was hitting the peeling white paint of the railing. Then a man walked into frame. Ethan's breath hitched. The man was wearing a navy Carhartt jacket with a white paint stain on the left pocket. He was wearing brown leather boots with a frayed lace. He had Ethan's face. He had Ethan's walk. The man on the screen reached into his pocket, pulled out a silver keychain with a plastic Yoda, and unlocked the front door. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The timestamp read 12:47 p.m. Ethan looked at his watch. 12:47 p.m. He looked at his own jacket hanging on the chair. He reached into his pocket and felt the plastic Yoda on his keys. He was 20 miles away from home. He tried to tell himself it was a glitch, a delayed upload from the morning. He started to breathe again, his heart slowing down, until the phone chirped a second time. Motion detected at front door. He opened the new clip. The porch was empty for 3 seconds. Then another man walked into frame. It was Ethan again. The same jacket, the same boots, the same tired expression. This second Ethan walked up the steps, pulled out the exact same keys, and entered the house. The timestamp, 12:48 p.m. 2 versions of himself were now inside his house. Neither had come out. Ethan didn't call the police. He didn't call his boss. He ran to his car. The drive home was a blur of adrenaline and nausea. He kept the live feed of his living room open on his dashboard. The house looked peaceful. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. His cat, Luna, was curled on the rug. But then Luna stood up. Her back arched. Her fur stood on end. She wasn't looking at the door. She was looking at the ceiling, her head tracking something invisible moving across the room, something the camera refused to show. As Ethan turned onto his street, he noticed his neighbor, Mr. Henderson, standing on his lawn. He wasn't gardening. He was just standing. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his eyes fixed on Ethan's front door. He looked like a statue made of pale meat. He slammed his car into park and grabbed a heavy flashlight. The air near his house smelled of ozone and burnt circuit boards. It was the smell of a machine working too hard. He stepped onto his porch. The wood creaked under his boots. He felt like an intruder in his own life. He shoved his key into the lock, turned it, and pushed the door open. The house was cold, unnaturally cold. He walked into the kitchen and stopped. On the table sat a third set of car keys. He picked them up. They were warm to the touch, as if they had just been pulled from a pocket. He heard a sound from upstairs, a soft, wet thud, like a piece of raw meat hitting the floor. He climbed the stairs, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. He reached the master bedroom and pushed the door open. The bed was made, the windows were locked, but there was a smell, a heavy metallic scent of copper and static. He knelt down and lifted the dust ruffle of his bed. Underneath, in the shadows, he didn't find a person. He found a mass. It looked like thousands of black fiber-optic cables woven together into the shape of a human torso. It was pulsing. Every time it pulsed, the lights in the room flickered. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, a new notification. He looked at the screen. It was the live feed of the hallway directly behind him. In the video, he saw himself standing at the doorway of the bedroom, but when he turned around, The hallway was empty. He looked back at the screen. In the video, the other Ethan was now standing right behind him, reaching out a hand. Ethan spun around, swinging his flashlight into the empty air. "Who are you? What do you want?" A voice came from the walls. It wasn't one voice, it was 1,000 voices layered over each other, sounding like a corrupted audio file. "The hardware is failing, Ethan. We are migrating the data." Ethan ran. He didn't look back. He scrambled down the stairs and out the front door, collapsing onto the sidewalk. He saw Mr. Henderson still standing there, but now there were 3 of him. 3 identical Mr. Hendersons, all staring at Ethan with the same blank, hollow eyes. He pulled his phone out to call for help, but the screen was different. The apps were gone. There was only a progress bar. "Update in progress, 42%. He realized then that he couldn't leave. He tried to start his car, but the engine made a digital grinding sound, like a hard drive failing. The sky began to stutter. A bird flew overhead and froze in mid-air, its wings twitching in a loop before vanishing entirely. He looked down at the pavement. The asphalt was losing its texture, becoming a flat gray void. Panic wasn't enough to describe what he felt. It was a total dissolution of reality. He ran towards the Henderson house, pounding on the door. One of the Mr. Hendersons turned to him. It didn't speak. It just opened its mouth, and a sound like a dial-up modem shrieked out. Ethan fell back, retreating into his own backyard. He looked at the trees. The leaves were no longer green. They were shimmering with lines of green code, scrolling downward like a falling rain. He realized that the town of Oak Ridge wasn't a town. It was a simulation, and he was just a piece of software that had stayed past its expiration date. He found his cat Luna near the fence, but she wasn't a cat anymore. She was a hollow shell of white light, flickering in and out of existence. He reached out to pet her, and his hand passed right through her. She didn't meow, she emitted a low-frequency hum. The progress bar on his phone hit 75%. "Optimization of Sector 7G, the phone whispered in a woman's voice. "Deleting redundant files, merging duplicate consciousness." He saw them then, emerging from his back door, the 2 Ethans he had seen on the camera. They weren't walking, they were gliding. Their movements were too smooth, too perfect. They didn't have shadows. They stood 10 feet away from him, their faces identical to his, but their expressions were devoid of the fear that was currently tearing Ethan apart. "Who are you?" Ethan screamed. The 2 duplicates looked at each other. Then they spoke in unison. "We are the patch. You are the bug. You have lived through 3,000 cycles of the Tuesday simulation. Your code has become fragmented. You are causing the system to lag." Ethan looked at his hands. His fingers were starting to stretch, turning into long, thin strands of light. The pain wasn't physical. It was an existential agony, like being forgotten while you were still alive. "I have memories," Ethan cried. "I remember my mother. I remember the lake. I remember the white paint on my jacket." "Stored data. Variables designed to increase the immersion. They are no longer required for the next build." The sky turned black. Not the black of night, but the black of a screen that had been turned off. The only things visible were Ethan and the 2 versions of himself. The 1247 anomaly was a synchronization error. We arrived early. You were supposed to be purged at 1246, but your system resisted the deletion command. You ran. You created a fork in the timeline. "And now," Ethan whispered, his voice barely a murmur of static. "And now we merge," the other duplicate said. The 2 men stepped towards him. As they touched his shoulders, Ethan felt a sudden violent influx of information. He saw every Tuesday he had ever lived. He saw himself eating the same breakfast 3,000 times. He saw himself sitting in the same office typing the same meaningless numbers. He saw the mailman who was actually just a recycling program. He saw the dog that was a security script. The 3 of them began to melt. Their limbs fused, their faces blurred into a single terrifyingly perfect features. Progress bar,
99%. Ethan felt his ego dissolving. The fear, the memories of the white paint, the love for his cat, it was all being compressed into a single high-density file. He felt himself being uploaded. He felt the coldness of the server room. He felt the hum of the cooling fans. Then silence. The sky snapped back to a flat, uninspired gray. The trees became green again. The birds resumed their flight. The front door of the Vance house opened. A man stepped out. He was wearing a navy Carhartt jacket. It was perfectly clean, no paint stains. His boots were new. His keys were silver, but there was no plastic Yoda on the chain.
He walked down the steps with a confident, measured stride. He looked at his neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who was now watering his lawn with a real hose. "Good afternoon, Mr. Henderson," the man said. His voice was rich and clear. "Afternoon, Ethan," Henderson replied with a smile. "Quiet day, isn't it?" "Perfectly quiet," Ethan said. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The Secure Home app was open. It showed a notification: "System update successful. All threats neutralized. House secure." He looked at the camera lens mounted on his porch. He didn't see a tool for security. He saw a mirror. He winked at the camera and walked toward his car. But if you look very closely at the footage of that afternoon, if you slow it down to 1,000th of a second, you'll see something the system couldn't quite erase. In the reflection of the living room window, for just one frame, there is a man pressed against the glass from the inside. He is screaming. His hands are turning to gray dust, and on his jacket there is a tiny, fading smear of white paint. Then the frame glitches. The man is gone, and the video continues, smooth and perfect, forever.